In the mosques of the little towns of the Riyadh district, the word went out that the Al Saud had returned, and with them the fierce commitment to Sharia law and Islamic values.
واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا. يا أيها المسلمون، إن من فضل الله عز وجل على هذه البلاد أن جمع كلمة أهلها على التوحيد وإقامة شريعتها السمحة، وذلك بفضل الله عز وجل ثم بفضل عبد العزيز.
يعني في تلك الأيام
People in those days saw in Abdul Aziz their values and their manners. They saw in Abdul Aziz their hopes and wishes and expectations, and that's why they followed him willingly, because they were very religious people too.
Abdul Aziz and his father began to reach out to the tribes and emirs who controlled the oases. One by one they fell in behind him, and in 1903 Abdul Aziz felt strong enough to unify the lands, moving northwest into Qasim.
We found out that bin Saud, having arrived in Buraida, left with the flags of Riyadh, then passed to Uneza. Then he went to Al-Ras. He got to a place called Ibn Gail, about 10 or 11 at night. I saw him praying on a sand dune. Later on, I sat across from him, and we ate from his lunch. Ibn Gail brought his food and milk, and all of us, the hungry ones, sat and ate. He said to us, "With good health." It's true, we ate his lunch.
After a drawn battle at Bukhariya, Abdul Aziz set out to attack at Shinana. The Al-Rashid was supported by Turkish troops with artillery, but Abdul Aziz was undeterred.
We, the young ones, ate his lunch. And then he just jumped on his horse and started to strike out at them in all directions. He did not find bin Rashid because he just started the battle and fled. Abdul Aziz struck them on all sides until he was victorious. We, the young ones, ran after him. The scene turned to ashes, and bin Rashid ran away.
The victory had been won, and Abdul Aziz added Qasim to his lands. The Ottomans resorted to negotiations with Abdul Aziz. Turkish garrisons were later withdrawn from Qasim. In Arabia at that time, it was not enough for a ruler to control the towns. Outside in the desert were the Bedouin tribes, leading a nomadic life, preying on the townsfolk and each other. Their raids and counter-raids led to blood feuds and instability. To ensure security, Abdul Aziz had to enforce Islamic law between the tribes and the townsfolk.
All the tribes in Nejd had big armies, horses and men. All of them were strong. All of the Nejd Bedouins claimed to have the truth, and no one could really overpower them. When Abdul Aziz came, he saw many awful divisions between the tribes.
In bringing about security, force was not enough. To settle the tribes, Abdul Aziz tried a revolutionary new policy. He enlisted the power of Islam. He sent preachers to the tribes, who urged them to settle down in fixed communities or hijar around the wells and the mosques, made up of different tribes devoted to farming, not war.
He called upon them and sent people asking them to believe in God and his messenger. He provided them with the books on faith written by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. He called them to be citizens and supplied them with ammunition to fight the enemies of God and his messenger. If they did not become one entity, he said, Satan would make them fight one another.
The movement took hold. The tribes returned enthusiastically to Islamic faith and styled themselves Ikhwan. Eventually, there were more than 200 settlements. It was a significant social change. The first hijra was founded in 1913. Security and peace prevailed in the regions. The Ikhwan, with the townsfolk, provided a ready source of brave, committed soldiers for Abdul Aziz's army.
We believe that Allah, the Exalted One, uses us as his instrument. As long as we serve him, we will succeed. No power can check us, and no enemy will be able to kill us.
Abdul Aziz sent them teachers and books on religion and the traditions of the Prophet. When through the grace of God they felt themselves on the road to paradise, they said, "Oh, Abdul Aziz, we are ready to fight."
Abdul Aziz's rule at this time extended only over the center of Arabia. But now his reputation for security and reliance on Islamic practice was to bring rewards elsewhere, in Al-Hassa to the east. Al-Hassa was a vast oasis, rich in dates, and it had at one time been under the Al Saud. Now it was ruled by the Ottoman Turks, but they were unable to control the violence of the tribes who surrounded the oasis.
The Turkish authorities were making deals with Bedouin gangs to divide the spoils they looted. At that time, local figures saw there was no way out of this crisis except to contact King Abdul Aziz.
The religious leaders in Al-Hassa had had close contacts with Riyadh for years. So in 1912, they sent a letter to Abdul Aziz inviting him to come to Al-Hassa. Abdul Aziz was afraid the British might replace the Turks in Al-Hassa. So, having tricked the tribes who surrounded Al-Hassa to move off to the north, Abdul Aziz set off with 900 men.
We were already in view of Al-Hafuf. From the sand dune on which I was sitting, I could clearly see the walls of the powerful citadel overlooking the town. My heart was heavy with indecision. I felt tired. I longed for peace and home. I suddenly found that my mind had made a decision regarding the war. I would attack Al-Hafuf, and God would lead me to victory.
Abdul Aziz sent his people ahead, according to his plan to climb the walls of Hafuf and take positions inside the town.
From the side of the western wall of Al-Qut, they prepared a special hole for his entrance. They erected ladders for him in the bottom of the trench, which he climbed and entered through this hole.
He was received by the people of the town, who gave him their allegiance.
And the Ottoman soldiers were scared, and they started firing recklessly in the air. In the morning, the Turkish governor tried to use force.
Eventually, the Turks surrendered.
The agreement was reached between King Abdulaziz and the Turkish governor Ahmed Nadim, who surrendered his authority and left with his 1,200 soldiers and military honor intact.
Having taken over Al-Hassa, Abdulaziz had to deal with the tribesmen who had previously preyed on the oasis.
When these tribes knew that Abdul Aziz had entered Al-Hassa, they felt that the breast that was feeding them milk was cut off. So they got mad and fought him for 2 years.
It was a bitter war. During the fighting, Abdul Aziz's brother, Sa'ad, was killed and he himself wounded by one of the tribesmen.
So he aimed at him and hit him in his belt, which was full of bullets. The bullets exploded. He was badly wounded and he fell to the ground.
The war was finally balanced. If word got out that Abdul Aziz was wounded, his enemies would take heart. He swiftly arranged to get married.
He didn't want to consummate his marriage, nor was he able to, because he was gravely injured. He only wanted them to hear that he was getting married. They would be wondering how a man who was hit could also be getting married. They would not believe that he was hit, and this is what was intended. He directed his men to build up the fire and celebrate with a dance, so that it would be known that Abdul Aziz was getting married that night and was in the best of moods. They said to one another, "How can you say that Abdul Aziz was hit, and still he's getting married?"
Victory in the east soon followed. Once the ruler of a landlocked state, Abdul Aziz now had access to the sea, with all the wealth and contacts of overseas trade. Abdul Aziz had taken Al-Hassa at a crucial moment. Britain and the Turks were about to go to war. In 1914, when the First World War broke out, both sides angled for Abdul Aziz's support. Each recognized him as an important ruler. The British brought a large army to Iraq and fought their way up the rivers towards Baghdad. They needed to prevent Abdul Aziz from further conquest in the Gulf. They signed a treaty with him in 1915, and the next year he went to Basra for talks to avoid being drawn into the war. There he saw the vast military build-up for the Iraq campaign. It was on a scale unknown in Arabia, with the latest military technologies. In Basra, too, he met British political officers. One of them, Gertrude Bell, was impressed.
He is a man of splendid physique, standing well over 6 feet and carrying himself with the air of one accustomed to command. He is of proved daring, and he combines with his qualities as a soldier that grasp of statecraft which is yet more highly prized by the tribesmen. Politician, ruler, and raider, Ibn Saud illustrates a historic type.
The relationship between Abdul Aziz and Britain was very clear, with no grey areas. He addressed them frankly on the things he felt were right, and presented policies that showed both experience and sound judgment. So the British felt at ease dealing with him. They knew he was a wise man, and they should not make any trouble with him.
Eventually, the British won their war, and the Arab world would be transformed. In the Hejaz, Britain had encouraged the Hashemite ruler Sharif Hussein to revolt against the Turks. By the end of the war, Turkish power in the Arab world was destroyed. So the British and their allies imposed a new settlement on the territories they now dominated. They recognized Sharif Hussein in a kingdom of the Hejaz, and with their help, 2 of his sons would become kings of Transjordan and Iraq. The situation was tense. In 1919, Abdul Aziz's soldiers defeated a Hashemite attack at Turaba with great loss. But nonetheless, he remained encircled.
They encircled us from all sides and wanted to destroy us. But Allah made us victorious over them and made his word supreme. He made us victorious by the power of his oneness in our hearts and faith in our minds.
Abdul Aziz was hemmed in, but he put the enthusiasm and religious devotion of his soldiers to work, continuing the unification of the country. In 1919, Abdul Aziz took over the sovereignty in Akhir. And then he settled matters with Hail. He laid siege to the town, and then, after 2 months, he tightened his grip.
King Abdulaziz spent so many years sending them messages, asking them for reconciliation, trying to come to a mutual understanding or to surrender. Nothing came out of it. He gave them so many years.
I strengthened the siege and occupied all the forts and defenses around the town. They then sued for peace and accepted all my terms, and the town with its defenses and garrison are in my hands. Now it has become part of my dominions, and its people my subjects, and there is nothing further to fear from them. I have pardoned them for the past.
To prove it, when he had won, he welcomed the Rashid ruling family and treated them like he treated his own children and cousins.
Now Abdul Aziz turned to face a challenge in the west. As ruler of the Hejaz, Sharif Hussein decided to ban people from Nejd from going to Mecca on pilgrimage. A confrontation began. In the Hejaz itself, Hussein's rule was becoming ever more unpopular.
May God not bring that time again. Say amen to that. There were taxes. There was injustice. Uncle Hussein Faiz was an old man. I was considered one of his children, and he used to weep at it. He used to complain that the customs duties added to his taxes reached 20 guineas. At that time, 20 golden guineas were worth a lot. In those days, the taxes were not that much. I wrote a petition to Al-Hussein, who was in Mecca, asking him for mercy. His answer was to double the amount. Either you pay or go to jail. Is that a king? You ask for mercy and he doubles the amount or sends you to jail?
In 1924, Abdul Aziz's impatience with Hussein's ban on the pilgrimage ran out, after the collapse of attempts to come to an agreement. His army marched on the Hejaz. After the capture of Taif, the people of the holy city of Mecca held their breath in fear of their lives. They waited as Abdul Aziz prepared to take the city. He issued a proclamation guaranteeing the safety of the pilgrimage and the people. 3 months later, he entered the holy city as a Haji himself, without a fight. Hussein had abdicated and fled before Abdul Aziz's advance. Hussein was succeeded by his son Ali.
I remember the first day he came. He had a big tent near Ma'abda area, and he gave a speech to the people and the leaders of Mecca. He told them, I came here only to serve you and to serve this holy place, and I promise you security and prosperity. I remember he had a big sack full of French silver coins, and he said, I brought my wealth and the wealth of my father and grandfather, and I'm going to spend it all in the path of God. And he really did distribute the wealth. In the beginning, there was some apprehension. But since they knew that there would be nothing except security and stability, they returned to Mecca, and things went back to normal.
On the coast, the port of Jeddah held out. Instead of mounting an assault, Abdul Aziz ordered his troops to seal off the town. After a siege lasting a year, Jeddah was handed over. Sharif Ali left the town. Less than a month before, Abdul Aziz's son Muhammad had entered Medina peacefully. Having accepted the surrender, Abdul Aziz returned to Mecca and declared an end to the war. Hejaz had once been part of the first Saudi state. It was now part of his kingdom. In 1930, Jazan too became part of his kingdom. Abdul Aziz had become guardian of the holy places of Islam. He had come a long way from the privations of his desert youth. He had restored his land to the prestige it had lost, becoming the master of Arabia in the process, presiding over the progress of security and religion. "2 years on, he would declare his dominions to be a new nation, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It would be his task to forge the diverse peoples of his kingdom into a united nation. He would harness the new technology of the modern world to ensure their prosperity. At a time when almost all Arabs were suffering under colonial rule, his kingdom would be a bastion of independence. And to the last, he would devote his authority and power to the service of his Muslim faith.